Welcome to the Real Craven County Schools podcast. Today I have Miss Jennifer Dacey, our board chairman. Thank you for being here.
Excited to be here.
Well, I'm so glad so that we could talk about some important things in regards to Craven County Schools. And I know that you've had some hot topics that you've been covering and working on.
Yes, we have.
So I know one of the things that you've been trying to tackle since you've been on the board has been in regards to attendance.
Yes.
So tell me some of the things, because I know that you get to hear from your constituents as well as from your stakeholders as well.
Sure.
So one of the things that's been on your hot topics has been in regards to absenteeism.
Right. And I think, as we've discussed in the boardroom, I think that this is an issue that came about largely as a result of COVID. And we've seen it just out in the world in the larger workforce. Employers have seen it as well. So it's not a problem that's just unique to students in our school system. It's really been a nationwide epidemic. And I think it happened because, of course, in most states, including ours, we forced kids to stay at home during COVID and learn remotely, supposedly. That was the theory, that they could do that. I think that was challenging for a lot of our students. As lots of folks know, we have a rural county and we didn't have great Wi-Fi and internet all across our county. And so there were a lot of challenges, especially the day-to-day of doing that during COVID. And I think it became a habit for a lot of our families, so parents and students included, to not make school attendance the priority that it really needs to be to ensure student success long term.
And so now that's kind of trickled down and we're back in school.
We are?
Yes. And so we've been back in school.
We've been back in school and we want all of our students to benefit from the top-notch academics that we provide. And we really can't do that unless they are in our school buildings the entire day.
That's right. Because if you're not in the seat, you're not getting instruction.
Right.
Because we're not doing remote learning anymore.
Correct.
So unless, we're having inclement weather or there's an emergency situation.
And as you know, that's limited to 5 days.
That's correct. And the other thing that we're seeing too is we're seeing late arrivals.
Yes.
And early dismissals.
Right.
So I think sometimes parents are using that as a convenience, possibly.
Yes, that's my understanding.
And it's not just at the high school level.
No, this is an elementary and middle school issue too. And so I think my plea to parents and caregivers and guardians is to please prioritize your child's education. We know that there are the occasional orthodontist appointment, doctor's appointment, all of those things. We know sometimes there's a family emergency, there's an unavoidable absence. But to the greatest extent possible, you really need to avoid. And a lot of our schools have this posted. You cannot pick your child up early beyond a certain time. And there are a lot of reasons for that. First and foremost, I think there's security reasons for that, right? Because we don't want too many people in and out of our buildings at a time when we're getting ready to release students. It just makes the dismissal process more complicated. Mm-hmm. But we also just have got to have our kids in their seats for instructional time.
Well, and when you're doing it for convenience to avoid the carpool line.
Yes. And that has been a point that I have heard numerous times from our teachers at even the elementary school level and principals. So we've got to really prioritize the attendance, and it shows. And we know that the attendance really delivers in terms of academic success for our students.
It does. And I was looking at some statistics and, even when a student is absent 2 days out of a month, that's 20 days out of the school year.
Right.
That's huge.
It does. It is a huge
it really
impact.
starts to add up.
It does.
And one of the things, too, that we've started looking at, we've really tried to be very instrumental in making those notifications to our parents.
Correct.
So we're doing the emails and the text notifications, so there shouldn't be any excuses in regards to that they didn't know when their child was out.
That's right.
So they are aware.
Right.
So we have the ability for them to know that. They also have 5 days to be able to provide an excuse for absences that are excusable. But then we do have those absences that aren't excusable.
Right.
And I think that there's some misinformation in regards to that. So we looked at their board policy in regards to that, and that information that is readily available for our families. So we have that on the district website as well as in the student and parent handbooks. So there's information that goes out to families at 3 absences, at 6 absences, as well as 10 absences.
Yes.
And at 10 absences, that's when it becomes compulsory.
Right.
So, and that's when the legal system comes in.
That's
and
right.
we don't ever want it to get to that
We
point.
certainly do not. That is not something that parents want to have to deal with. It's not something that we want to have to deal with at the school level, but we are required to deal with that by law. And so we have a process. We have guidance counselors and social workers who cover, 5 schools each, and sort of oversee that effort to ensure that the communication is there in terms of the legal notifications of the child's attendance status. And if need be, we're going to have to take those cases to court. Now, it's not something we like to do. We certainly don't want to do that because it does it requires parents to come to court and to sit there until their case is heard. And oftentimes what's happening is those cases are being continued. The judge is saying, okay, well, this is the situation and I'm going to continue this case and we'll see, how you do over the next couple months about
making it better
and getting your child to school. And so I think parents need to be mindful of the time that it's going to take up if it comes to that. And we certainly don't want it to come to that. But we do have judges who very much understand that the attendance has a profound impact on our child's, on children's long-term academic success. And we want our kids to graduate. We want that high school graduation rate to be as high as we possibly can. And we want them to be productive members of society who are able to take care of themselves and help our entire community.
And we know that it's hard to build partnerships when those situations happen. And these are extreme cases.
Right.
And it's rare, but they do happen.
They do. Yes.
And like you said, it's required by law.
Right. It's just
unfortunate, but it does happen. And again, when I was talking to you in regards to stats, I was really surprised. I mean, I don't think that people realize that it even has impacts in kindergarten and first grade, that we're seeing these impacts from attendance issues having repercussions in third grade on their test results.
Right. I think there's so many things that we learned as we were coming out of COVID. That makes sense to me. It also, we have to remember that there were a lot of kids who were not in a nursery school or a preschool setting like they normally would have been. So they were not starting and not learning how to sit down in seats. So those are the kind of skills that, you may not be learning all the academic things in kindergarten, but you're sort of learning that social behavior. How do we get along well with others, right? Everything important we learned in kindergarten. And also the rudimentary basics of, this is how I stand in a line. This is how I sit in my seat. And if they're missing that in preschool, they're coming to us a little delayed in sort of the social aspects of going to school.
It reminds me of that poster, Everything I Learned in Kindergarten.
Yes.
Yeah. There was another statistic too that I saw that showed that students in high school, when they start having the absences as early as in 9th grade, that once they get to college, that 11% that they don't even finish college.
Correct.
I was like, wow. I was like,
correct.
I did not know that.
Well, and I think there's so many cultures where you see that it's a lot of things are learned behaviors.
Correct.
Right. And so if you see mom and dad getting up and going to work every day and you see your siblings getting up and going to school every day, that is part of what you do.
Right.
And when we get out of those sorts of habits, it becomes more difficult to do the things that we're expected to do in order to graduate, get that high school diploma and go on to college and be successful. And we particularly you and I both know we have college students. The last thing we want is to have a student who's invested a lot of time and money.
Yes. That tuition,
yes.
You better be going to class.
Yes, you better be going to class. We don't want you dropping out. Yeah. You need to be showing up in that seat.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because one of the things that I also saw was some of the things that parents can do to be able to create those habits, to be able to get so that you're not having these habits in regards to absenteeism. And one of them was, creating not, I wanted to say patterns, but where students were going to bed on a regular
regular schedule. Yep.
Regular schedule. Thank you.
Yep.
Also doing appointments after school hours, those types of things, just regular things that would be consistent so that they would have that. So it wasn't something that was off schedule.
Right. And it's really, I know in the summertime, everybody,
totally
we let the schedule go. Right. So no matter what the age of the kid, they're staying up late, sleeping in, and that's the fun part about summer, is allowing the kids to go without a schedule. And that's why I think it's the time to start thinking about now, okay, we got to start getting to bed a little earlier so that we're on that schedule and setting that routine now, so that they're not like dying that first week of school because they've been getting up so early. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the other thing too that I saw that was good, because I used to do this too, is lay out your clothes the night before. Make your lunch the night before. Those types of things,
just to simplify it, so you're not doing the mad dash to get everybody in the car or to the bus stop and
throwing your socks and shoes on as you're getting in the car. I remember those days. So
I do too.
Yeah,
it's kind of fun
time. Yeah, I was gonna say those were fun times.
We miss it now.
Yes. Well, good. Well, hopefully if anybody has any questions, they can refer to the website. They can look up the board policy. They can always ask their school administrator, and they can be able to point them in the right direction. But hopefully we'll be able to start off the school year and they'll know we really want them to be in the classroom.
Oh, it's so important. We really want them to be there. The teachers are all ready and excited to see them, and we just want them there every possible day. And I think that we're going to see, I'm hopeful, I know I'm not allowed to talk about scores yet, and they're embargoed, but I'm hopeful that we're going to continue to see the kinds of improvement that we have in our scores. And I think that's because we've got teachers who have really put the work in there, and we've got kids who are coming to school. So
that's right. All right. Well, we're going to see it.
Yep.
And the other thing, too, that I know that you've been working on is in regards to the calendar.
Oh, yes.
Calendar flexibility has always been a hot item with the board. So we were able to approve a calendar for the 24-25 school year that looks like no other.
Right.
So it is different, but I think it's different in a good way.
Yes.
So some of the highlights, our teachers were able to start earlier this month, and I know that they've taken advantage of it. And one of the things that I thought was so interesting is that they had the ability starting on August 5th with their O days, and some of the principals said they were still coming in before that
yes.
to get into their classrooms, and they were like, you can't come in yet. We're still trying to get your rooms ready for you. So I think teachers, just their nature and heart, they want to get into their classrooms and get them ready and set up.
Yep.
But that being said, the deal with the calendar was we were still trying to make sure that students had the ability to be able to take their exams before winter break, because we know how important that is.
Yes.
We also have it built in so that we have a nice spring break at the end of March. We've got a nice long Easter weekend, and then we get out at the end of May.
Right.
And then we've got graduation there on Friday, which is nice. Everybody likes graduation on Friday. And so we'll have a longer summer, because summer did feel really quick this year.
Yes.
But tell me some of the things that you've done in terms of trying to work with Raleigh in terms of the calendar.
So there's
local flexibility.
Right. That's what we've been really asking for, is local flexibility. And I think it's really clear that we're not going to have any movement on that for the foreseeable future. I think that's because of a particular state senator who's not going to budge on that issue. There's been lots of discussion in the House and local bills. We have had a local bill that would give us the flexibility to do things a little bit differently than we are at the moment. We'd like to ideally start before August 26th. And so at the moment, I think we've done the best possible job we could of coming up with this calendar so that our semesters are balanced. And the challenge is going to continue in Raleigh, I think, but we're going to continue to talk about the fact that it's really a matter of fundamental fairness, I think, because charter schools are given all kinds of options and flexibility in their calendar, but we are being denied those same options, and I think that is just fundamentally unfair, and poses a real challenge to allowing us to do the best job for our students and give them all the academic opportunities we would like. So while I'm excited about this calendar, I think it's been a great way for us to help attract additional employees to the district because they like it.
Yes.
They like the breaks at the holidays and also at the end of the year. It's still not exactly what we like.
No.
So we've got a ways to go, and I think we just have to keep talking about these issues with our legislators, and we're going to continue working on that. I think the other thing that I want the public to understand is that there are districts who have taken what I view as a risk, and they have done a calendar that does violate the calendar law, and we will ultimately see what consequences there are for those districts. There may be some, there could be some, and we just
One
were not.
district close by had to go back
Yes,
and make some
they
revisions.
had to go back. They were actually sued, and so they had to spend some money defending themselves, and ultimately went back and redid their calendar to make some other adjustments. And what we have done is, adding the 20 minutes, and so 10 minutes earlier, 10 minutes later, and that is an additional 20 minutes of instructional time. And I think the great thing is that we were able to compare with other districts. And really, when we looked at neighboring districts, we did not have quite as much instructional time in our day as some other districts did. So I think this gets us closer to that and is putting us more on par with what others were already doing. And it still allows us to have the required number of days and hours, all of those things, checks every box. There are a lot of different boxes we have to check. But we're just really happy that we were able to do that and align with the community college too, because we do have a lot of dual enrollment, and we've got to be mindful of that too. So,
well, I think one of the things, you bring up a valid point in regards to the charter schools. We at the same time are trying to be good stewards,
right,
and say, we understand that people want options.
Right.
And so if we want to be able to have those options, allow us to have the same options as well in terms of flexibility.
Right.
And we don't have that with the calendar the way that it is now.
No, we don't.
So, and we try to be as creative as we possibly could. And we did do that. And so I'm thankful that we did that. And so I hope that as we continue to talk, and I know that you do as best as you can, to those that will listen, that eventually maybe one day we'll get that flexibility that we deserve.
I'm hopeful. And I think for the folks out in the public who maybe don't have the background, the whole story, this happened a number of years ago, and it was largely a hard and fast date that was put into statute because the travel and tourism industry really wanted that. They wanted high school labor essentially to help with the travel and tourism industry. And I think we did get some of the statistics from our local area. I don't think we have the numbers of our students engaged in that industry really at this point that maybe we did when this law was first passed. And so I think that's something that should also be taken into consideration. Yeah.
And this was passed for the entire state.
Correct. Yeah, a little bit heavy-handed in my view. If you're saying that you're going to give us some local flexibility, which is typically the position that the General Assembly takes with a lot of things, it seems to me only fair that we get it with regard to the calendar.
Yes, I agree. And another hot topic lately has been cell phones.
Sure.
And so one of the things that we did last year is that we implemented no cell phones. And I was, kind of leery and wasn't really sure how it was going to work. And actually, we didn't really have many hiccups, which was surprising because I think what was the students were probably really scared that they were going to lose their phones, which, can be very scary when you're used to having your phone all the time.
Yep. It's an appendage.
Yes. But we were hearing from the high schools that, it was causing a disruption when our students were trying to do other things to get out of class so that they could be on their phones.
Right.
So we always want to hear from our leaders in terms of what we can do to make improvements as part of our PDSA cycle and continuous improvement. And if there's things that we can do better, we want to hear from our school leaders. And one leader in particular spoke out in regards to the high schools and said, hey, we think that we can do this better.
Yeah. I think our high school principals all get together, and I think they were talking about how much time they were spending trying to deal with this policy and regulation and how it applies in their school building. And my view has always been that the folks closest to the work, the folks in the school building, the teachers and the principal are the ones who really have to implement everything that we decide as a board. And while I have read a lot of the research, and many of us have, and we know that there are definite risks and concerns that I have about young people, really any of us, spending too much time on social media and too much time on our phones, that ship has already sailed for a lot of these students. And I think it's a different issue to have that discussion with regard to middle school students and elementary school students. And I think that's why we've had some discussions with some of our middle school principals about what can we do to encourage parents not to go the cell phone, the smartphone route with their middle schoolers and certainly with their elementary schoolers. So I think that's a different question. But for high schoolers, they were already using these smartphones. And so what was happening with the policy, I think, was it was driving students to other places to use the phone, to avoid being caught with the phone. And that was becoming a behavioral issue in and of itself. We had reports from SROs, we got all these kids in the bathroom. That creates a whole nother issue. We don't want to drive kids to do things in the bathroom they shouldn't be doing, right?
Well, and then they're missing instruction time.
Correct. And so I think it became a little bit of a
vicious cycle
in that, and in practice, while great in theory, in practice was not working out as well as we had hoped. And it's the kind of thing that I think you need to be prepared to evolve a little bit in how you're carrying it out. So, the principals of the high schools basically said, can we try something different for the first semester and see how that goes before we change the regulation that the superintendent has related to this. And I think it was very clear that, as with most everything, we really want to defer to school leadership as to how behavioral policies are carried out and implemented. So we're going to let them do that. And it will be an opportunity for them to explain to students that, we're trying to teach you how to be responsible. We're going to give you an opportunity to use this outside of instructional time. We want you to have it put away. And parents, that means you don't call them.
Like while you're in class, you're still in class to learn.
Do not call your student during class.
It's still supposed to be put away.
I know we don't have lockers in all of our schools that are utilized these days, but middle school does. If we have lockers, great. That's a place you can leave them. But I think we just wanted to give them an opportunity to work out a policy that might work better in practice, because you certainly I don't want the whole cell phone usage issue to get in between our school leaders, teachers, and our students building relationships. That's also part of the puzzle here. And
it sounds like it was causing another issue.
I think so. And, school resource officers, they can't do anything about that, right? I mean, it's not an assault. Right. It's not something that they're going to get in the middle of, nor should they. So we just had to come up with a policy that worked, and we're going to work toward that. So it's like everything.
And look,
You know.
if you've seen high schoolers on their phones and in between classes, they can text faster than anybody I know. They don't even have to look.
I know.
And so they'll be able to accomplish the things that they need to accomplish in those 4 minutes
Right.
and put their phones back away.
I'm worried about the long-term damage to their
to their
thumbs.
thumbs. Lots of carpal tunnel.
Yeah, that's my fear.
So back in January, it'll be reevaluated. And if it's not successful, then we'll go back to what it was if need be.
Right. So, at that point, we'll check in with them, and I would certainly encourage all of our teachers, anybody else in our school buildings, to let us know how they think it's working.
Yeah. I know Dr. Miller was adamant that she does not want to see cell phones during the instructional time. And if she
Right.
does, that it's off the table.
Right.
So,
So that's kind of where we are.
well, I'm glad that the board is open-minded and is able to listen and hear what the school leaders have to say because, like you said, they're the ones that are closest to the work.
They're closest to work. They're in the building, and that's not something, thankfully, that board members have to do. We don't spend time in buildings handing out discipline. And
Right. And who wants to be the cell phone police?
no, definitely not me.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time
my
away
pleasure.
from your busy day to come and be on the reel and talk about some of the hot topics. And
I
we look
enjoyed
forward
it.
to having you coming on again and having an update for the 24-25 school year.
Awesome. We're excited about the kickoff. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.